What's going on, guys? Welcome to another episode of Review for Your Eternity Season 2. This is episode 20, and with me, as always, I have Blue Spade. Also, this is the last episode of Season 2. We did get the announcement, of course. I mean, I guess let's just go ahead and say, like, we did get the announcement there is going to be a Season 3.
I mean, I more or less predicted that we were going to get a Season 3. I'm just surprised that, that they decided to announce it this soon.
I am kind of surprised. I don't know. I didn't think, like, I guess they always had planned for there to be a Season 3, though. So I guess it does make sense in that regard. But I just thought they were going to maybe, like, hold off and see, like, if the series was, like, I don't know, popular enough to warrant another season. But I guess they already had that in the plans to do it anyway. So I guess that's what they're doing.
But the problem is my major issue is, like, just the tone of the story just took a big 180 after the first season. It's just that was my issue, because about like how much they given Fushi to have these kinds of abilities to basically become a god at this point.
Yeah.
I mean, assuming it's like, and his ability to resurrect his old friends and possibly just maybe infinitely resurrect them again, if whenever he wants to. It's just I don't know. It's just like it just completely undoes all the emotional weight that I had back in season 1.
Yeah, it just feels like nothing really matters anymore because he has all these abilities and he's completely overpowered. There's nothing it's really like there's nothing he can do at this point. I mean, like, yeah, he brings everybody back. I mean, in this episode, of course, it kind of serves as a sort of an epilogue to everything that's happened. As we know, like, Fushi was able to, fend off the knockers from Renril and also resurrect pretty much everybody that died. I think it was, like, probably, like, with the sole exceptions, funnily enough, of the princess. So, like, everybody else comes back.
Yeah.
Yeah.
So, I mean, speaking of the princess, it's like, I mean, this of course leads to a confrontation between Messar and the princess's brother, who
comes
pretty much
nowhere.
banishes Messar. Yeah, it's just like he just banishes Messar and his friends from the kingdom. I think from 10 days, just due to the fact that he allowed his sister to die. But of course, they retort back, saying, "It's like, where the hell were you for that entire time?" I mean, that's what every one of us had. Is like, where the hell was the brother all this time while the knockers were attacking for how long that was happening for?
Yeah, it's felt like something they brought up at the last minute, really. Like, she has a brother and he's just been away the whole time, and now he's come back, conveniently after the fight's over. But yeah, like this is I'm not against, like, I guess you'd say, like, happy endings, but this is just kind of ridiculous. Like, I don't like it when it's like it has to basically, like, be it doesn't make any sense. Like, this one, it doesn't make any sense at all. How they can all just, the Fushi can just bring them all back now, and everybody that died is basically like nothing really even happened. Like, there was no fight, because everybody that died just comes back. The city was, is all, repaired now. So it's basically like nothing even really happened, if you think about it.
Yeah, they pretty much, it's just Fushi with all of his friends from his past, pretty much celebrating. Of course, they find out of nowhere that Echo ended up dying from her injuries.
That was okay.
And
that I don't know how you feel about this, but it just feels like I'm not sure how, like, I mean, it's just weird how they kind of treated her character too. I mean, both her and Kahaku, I guess you could say, she was introduced and she just, I mean, she did do some things, but she didn't really have played too much for an important role for the most part. And then she just kind of, it feels like she kind of sort of unceremoniously dies. And now she's a ghost along with Bon.
I mean, what the hell's death anymore?
Well, yeah.
I mean, what's the hell? How the hell's death anymore in the show?
Like, I mean, she could be brought back, and of course, I mean, I I guess like this also confirms that the people he brings back, I guess they aren't immortal, because in this episode we at near the end of it we see like I guess all the people that he brought back kind of live out their natural lives and die of old age. With the weirdly enough, with
Yeah.
the exception of March, which I thought was really odd. Um,
Well, no,
or,
March. I
well,
think it was like what was it? Fushi's creator mentions
yeah,
that
no,
she
no, no. I
passed
mean, like,
away.
yeah, she dies, but
Yes.
I mean, we don't actually see it happen, as opposed to like the other characters.
Yeah, I mean, like in just in great detail of what happened to the other characters. I think Tonari, lived out her life after writing a book about Fushi's story. I think Gugu lived his life, with his new friends in Renril and died of old age in a similar manner to March.
Hmm.
I think Messar died.
Well, yeah, yeah. So this is,
Messar
I was
died
going
of
to
like
mention this too. So the people that Bon assigned to help out Fushi, like they all kind of died. Like sort of, it was sort of depressing. Like yeah, like you were gonna say like Messar. I think he died. Like what did he drank too much.
he died of alcohol. He died of alcohol
Yeah,
overdose.
and,
Um, Kai died of a similar illness that his father did. Hyro was out, I guess in a way promoting what was it, Tanari's book about Fushi, but he gets assassinated by one of the anti-Fushi followers.
yeah.
Um, and of course, we also find out what happened to Kahaku. He commits suicide, and well, and of course, which of course leads to him and the knocker that possessed him to be killed, and pretty much gives back Fushi the remainder of the forms that the knocker stole.
Yeah, which also
And
gives him back those memories.
I mean, it's
And
just,
then of course
I don't know.
it's
It's just
the very last episode too, where they kind of like give us some backstory or like I guess a flashback sequence like with Kahaku. I guess like explaining like how he was chosen to be the successor or something like that. But or
no,
what-
no, no. I mean, he couldn't. He said he couldn't be chosen as the
Yeah.
successor just because he was a guy, because it's only the female descendants are the ones who's supposed to be the successor. But he put himself into that situation, so it's
This is the thing too. I'm a little bit confused about is like how many generations have they gone through? Like where every generation, like it's been a girl that was born, but all of a sudden it's a boy. Like that's just kind of weird. Like how all of a sudden that happens.
yeah, it's
Yeah.
I don't know. It's I don't know. I feel like I kind of pity Kahaku just in the situation that he's
Yeah, they were
in.
trying to make you
because-
feel bad for him with that flashback scene.
Yeah, it's just. I mean, he's a descendant of. I don't know, here's the thing. This is the problem what I had about it. It's just, I don't know why they couldn't have, Hayase continue to be like an ongoing antagonist. I think
Yeah.
it's possible that she could have I guess her spirit form could have haunted Fushi for the rest of his
Well,
life.
that's like what I've been saying about
maybe,
this
and-
series is that it doesn't really have a primary antagonist aside from just like the knockers, I guess. And I feel like that's, I guess, one of the problems
Yeah.
with it.
Maybe.
I mean, it doesn't really have to, but I mean, I don't know. I just feel like it would maybe make things a little bit more interesting if it did.
Maybe. I mean, if Fushi had these resurrection abilities, I mean, you would think that Heise's spirit would take advantage of this and maybe resurrect herself to continue her obsession with Fushi. But
Yeah.
I don't think that that they decided to go that route for whatever reason. I think it makes sense if they would have gone with that, but for whatever reason, they decide not to go with that plot point.
Yeah, I mean, the thing is that they could have made the whole descended thing interesting, but it felt like they didn't really do much with it until Kahaku came around, I guess. Because all the other descendants, like they were all in love with Fushi, but they, weirdly enough, except for I guess the girl at the beginning didn't really seem to act on that. and also Kahaku in a way. Uh,
I mean, Kahaku was the one who went the
yeah,
furthest out of all those descendants. I mean, he was willing to, I mean, he wanted to be with Fushi when, when he was in the, his female form, but Kahaku just like literally just takes it a step further and just a major hatred for this character, just downright pity him by the end of this.
yeah,
Um, and I don't know. It's just
yeah.
I just felt like he could have been a better character, but
It's kind of a
it's
missed
just a weird way that
opportunity.
they had him go down this route.
They could have done a lot more with him, but I felt like yeah, he didn't really do much through most of the series, and then it's not until like I guess near the end where they wanted to have him be kind of a villain.
Yeah, and that's pretty much the entire episode. Everyone just lives out their natural
Well, and
lives until
Fushi decides
Fushi.
to go to sleep for, I guess, hundreds of years and spread his roots all around the world in a way to combat the knockers. I suppose, I guess this is like to protect the knockers throughout the years,
Yeah,
or to protect people
and
from the
and
knockers.
then yeah, and then of course, and of course the end credit scene makes a lot more sense now than it did when it was first introduced, because we see, of course we see the spirits of all the people that Fushi's interacted with, like in the spirit realm.
Yeah,
And of course, we do get a post-credit scene in which Fushi reawakens from his slumber and wakes up to the modern age. That's
mhm.
pretty much where the
Well,
episode
and we
ends.
see that his
Which
roots have
what el-
spread. I guess have spread everywhere. Um, so I mean, you can pretty much say he's a god at this point. Like he's pretty much the god of the world because he's been like protecting it the whole time he's been asleep. Um,
Yeah,
but yeah, so
I
I
mean,
mean, I would be interested because it's like, oh, now they're in the modern age, but I feel like nothing's really going to change, even though the time period has changed. I feel like it's mostly going to remain kind of the same series that we've seen from this season. I mean, maybe not, but I don't really have any high hopes for season three. I'll be honest. Like, um,
yeah, and let's not forget to mention that Fushi is willing to resurrect his friends again once he wakes up in this new era of sorts. So
well,
he's
and I
like
also said this before we started the
he's gonna.
recording too, is that I feel like the reason they showed those characters dying their natural deaths is because they wanted to, in a way, I guess maybe wipe the slate clean and have like these new characters be introduced in, I guess, in season three to accompany Fushi and, maybe not bring those characters back, but I don't know. I guess it's always possible Fushi could also, bring them back.
I feel like that he is gonna bring them
Yeah.
back again, but he's gonna bring him back in an era in which nobody is gonna be familiar with.
Yeah.
I mean, they're just gonna be dragged into, because they're obviously, like, like if you're someone living in the old medieval past, and if you wake up to this new era with a whole slew of modern technology, you're gonna freak the fuck out.
Yeah. Yeah, I imagine, of course, that's going to be Fushi's reaction too. But, well, actually, I don't know. Like, I guess the question is, like, has he been watching everything that has happened the whole time, and he just already knows what's going on, or is he just going to wake up and like not know what's going on at all? Um,
I mean, I could assume that he was
yeah.
aware of
I mean, I'm
certain things,
assuming the
because
whole time he's
he
been
was.
observing things, like while he's been asleep.
Yeah, I mean, we saw him, like, I guess in a way, interacting with Bon in his deathbed of
Yeah.
sorts. So y- we could speculate that he was aware of certain things, but to whatever extent that he was aware of, we just don't know. So I mean, we'll have to see where it goes, assuming when season three is gonna come. But I really felt like, honestly, I just don't even feel like it was necessary, because it just I feel like it kind of gave all the other characters much better closure. I
Yeah.
guess living out their lives in a much better manner than they did when they died with
I mean, of
Fushi.
course, we
But
still, of course, have unresolved plot points, like the whole thing with the creator. What is the creator's ultimate goal? What is the knocker? Well, we know what the knocker's goal is, but I mean, there's still, of course, the knockers could potentially come back. There's the conflict with them. Um, but other than that, yeah, they kind of wrapped up. I guess that they gave those other characters proper closure, even though, like, I felt like even with them, there was unresolved things that really didn't get proper closure. That I, because they all had like these different things they wanted to do, and I kind of would have wanted to see them do some of those things, but I don't know. I guess you could say, yeah, they kind of just, they tried to give them some kind of
I
closure in a way.
I mean, I guess in a way, if Fushi were to resurrect somebody that Echo and March would make the most sense because they
Yeah.
couldn't live out their lives properly. I mean, with March, with her being
Well,
resurrected, she just spent most of the rest of her life just being with
they,
Fushi's side without even
March was the
doing
one I
anything.
thought like for that they were definitely going to show like what ended up happening with her, because as we know, like she wanted to be a mother and have a family and all this, but we never got to see any of that. Like we just hear about her death off screen. Like, but did they show the other characters' deaths? Which is, it was weird. Like, I was like, why are they just excluding March? Like, we just hear about it, but we don't actually, of course, we don't see it. Um,
Yeah,
so I don't know.
I mean, I don't know. I mean, we already know that Fushi still has the intention of bringing them back, supposedly to this new modern era that he's awakened up to.
Yeah.
So we'll see. But
Well,
I don't know. I mean,
speaking of them not understanding things or whatever, I mean, I would assume it might be much like how it was in this season, where they've been with Fushi the whole time, so they like already know everything that's happening. So it might be that might be their way of explaining things. Yeah,
possibly, maybe, but I mean, unless they were in like another realm of of the afterlife in which they weren't really. I mean,
I guess it
Fushi
depends
is
on if
like
they
just
moved on to the afterlife or if they were just took the form of ghosts and were hanging around Fushi or something the whole time.
yeah. I mean, I don't know. I mean, it's just not. We just don't know a lot about like what's been happening during Fushi's time. I guess just sleeping in the same location for whatever how long he's been doing it.
Yeah. But yeah, this whole season was just kind of mediocre in my opinion. Definitely a step down from season 1. It didn't really have the same appeal as season 1, where season 1 definitely had a lot more interesting things about it, more interesting questions that were brought up about like immortality and how Fushi has to deal with the tragedy of losing his friends and having to continue dealing with losing these different people and being immortal. But that of course, like, in season 2 gets thrown out the window with his resurrection abilities and all these other powers that he gets. The
Yeah,
conflict was more interesting in season 1 because we didn't really know too much about the Knockers, and they were these weird creatures that didn't really seem to have a goal of any sort, and they were there. I mean, I wanted to know more about them, but the answers that and of course we do get those answers in season 2, but the answers, of course, are just disappointing because it's just that they don't really have any interesting motivation. They just want to separate humans from their body, their souls from their bodies or something like that, and it's just kind of, I don't know, it's just boring, it's just lazy. I was hoping for a little bit more than that, and I feel like that's once we learn the creator's motivation too, who created Fushi, it might also be kind of lazy and just kind of predictable or something. I mean, I don't know. I mean, because we also kind of wonder about that, but at this point, I don't really feel like there's much reason to care. And that's kind of the problem with season 2. They took away any reason to really get invested in and care about what's going on in the series, and therefore, like, there's not really any excitement from me to see what they end up doing with season 3. So I'm not even sure if I really am gonna want to watch season 3 if it continues on with this trend of kind of Fushi just being really overpowered and being able to bring everybody back. If somebody dies, it doesn't matter; they'll just get brought back to life. It just kind of there's not any stakes anymore with the series because of that, and it's just kind of boring to watch because of it, because you already know, like, if somebody dies, it doesn't matter, Fushi will bring him back, and unless the the plot for whatever reason decides, oh well, they're just going to move on to the afterlife because they wanted to for different reasons, I guess. I don't know. I just felt like this. Like I said, I would, if I were to give this a rating, I'd probably give it a 5. I don't want to go any lower than that because I do feel like there there were interesting things that were brought up, but I feel like they were just not executed well at all. I feel like the other issue, of course, like we've been saying, has been the pacing. The pacing has been like really, it's been all over the place, I would say, because it started off fast paced, then it slowed down fairly significantly, I would say, in like the middle half. Well, actually, no, not even the middle half, because it did kind of rush through that Church of Bennett stuff. Once we get to Renril, or the Renril arc, I guess you would call it, it really slows to like a snail's pace. I feel like there was a lot of unnecessary things in the Renril arc that we could have kind of glossed over, and we wouldn't really have missed too much. It's just kind of it's just a lot of pacing issues that have also brought it down for me as well. And of course, the characters just, I feel like they're writing for the writing in general, I think, has just taken a massive nosedive. You know, the characters aren't as interesting. That's another problem with it. The new characters are, Bond kind of got a little bit interesting once his character changed from what he was in the beginning, but he kind of stagnated in a way. Like he didn't really develop much more after that. He just kind of stayed the way he was for the most part. So I don't know. I so far that's kind of how I feel about To Your Eternity. Season 1, I would say, is worth watching, but once you get to season 2, it definitely starts to have a lot of these issues crop up. I mean, some people said in the latter half of season 1 they started to have some issues, but really it's season 2, I would say, where it starts to get bad.
Yeah. I mean, looking back in season 1, like I didn't have problems with whatever pacing issues season 1 had, because it's just like, the emotional drama that the show had was the real hooker for me to just watch that show. Season 2, it started out decently, with Fushi trying to get back into society, and then with Tonori dying. But then it got into
I also thought the other thing too,
really
real quick, I thought was interesting was, we got to see like an older version of Fushi, and we kind of got that teased at the end of season 1. I was kind of like wondering if they were going to have like him sort of be like that throughout the series, like he was going to be maybe, physically more mature, but also mentally more mature. But that's not really the case. Like, I guess we should also mention Fushi as a character stays very stagnant as well. Like he doesn't really develop too much. He kind of just stays the same as it feels like aside from him speaking and being able to comprehend things better and all that, like he's not too much different than what he was, like I would say maybe in the latter half of season 1. It's like he's just kind of stayed the same character for the most part, and it's just kind of that's kind of contributed to how bored you kind of get watching the series. That it's not really interesting to watch Fushi because he's really just kind of bland in my opinion. And he hasn't really had much interesting development, even though there is quite a few things happening around him that, if he were a better developed character, would have been more interesting to see him react to. But I don't know. I don't know how you feel about that in particular, but
yeah, I don't know. I really wish, like you said, I really wish more could have been done with Fushi's character. Like, at least let him have like a relationship with somebody for once.
That's the other thing too I was going to mention too, is I thought he was going to have a relationship with Tonari. Like it seemed like that's where they were going with it, especially when she gets brought back in this episode too. It's based on like, I guess, some of her reactions. Like I thought they're like, maybe I'm wrong, but I feel like there's some kind of unrequited feeling she has for him, but she never like says anything about it. So I don't know. I feel like if they were going to do that, they should have just done it with her. Like, I don't know why, but they never do anything with that, especially considering they bring up the idea of Fushi trying to experience love. But that kind of that's another thing. They bring up some of these ideas, but then they drop them very quickly. Like the whole like Fushi not having experienced love or anything. Like they bring that up and then they just like completely, drop it really quick. They never really touch on it again.
Yeah, I mean, I don't know. It's just like the season 2 just kind of stagnated for me.
Yeah.
Once they reached like, well, pretty much the latter half of that season. I mean, the epilogue episode wasn't too bad, but it's just another excuse for them to make another season. And I just don't know where they're gonna end up taking season 3. Even with Fushi waking up into this new modern era that he's in right now.
Yeah. I mean, I might still give season 3 a chance just to see if it improves, but I I have low expectations, to be honest, after this season.
Yeah.
Um, so like, I mean, would you pretty much give the same rating then if you were to, I guess,
Yeah, I would give it the same.
yeah,
There's just not, it just doesn't have, the emotional stakes, like season 1 had. It's just, and with the amount of abilities that Fushi's been given, it just made him so damn overpowered. Just made him all to, and his, I mean, like, I don't really think that there was much development in his character because he's just remained the same since the season started,
yeah,
despite the fact that he's living like that they did like what a like a
200
like a
years,
couple of century,
I think.
yeah, 200-year time skip by the second episode, and he still acts the same way that he did before.
Yeah, the only thing they show is him like reading all these books, but yeah, we just don't see the progression of his character. He just, he's not any different from where he was before the time skip. Um, and I mean, I don't know. It's some people like, I mean, you compare it to, real life. I mean, you change as a person quite a bit within the span of like, not too many years. And then Fuchi's just an immortal character, and he's just staying the same person through like, hundreds of years later. So I don't know. It's just, I didn't really like that about it, but yeah, I don't really have too much else to say about, I guess, this season as a whole or this episode. It wasn't bad, but it was underwhelming. It had like a very lot of mistakes. It felt like the execution could have been a lot better, but yeah, I don't really have too much else to say about it though. I don't know if you have anything else to say.
Yeah, I think I have middle of the road expectations for season 3,
Yeah.
but I just don't know where they're gonna end up taking this. I mean, I really felt like the last episode of this season felt like almost somewhat of a proper ending, but like I said, I don't know where they're gonna end up taking this, if they're just gonna continue on with the whole Fushi versus Knocker plot point going all the way into the modern age, and whether if he's gonna bring back his friends from his past into this new era just makes, I don't know, just makes little sense in my opinion of wanting, and after they already lived their lives in a somewhat proper manner, I guess.
Yeah, I feel like this would be an opportunity to kind of do some things differently, I guess. But I don't expect it to happen. I feel like we're mostly going to get kind of a repeat of what we've seen so far with the series. The conflict with Knocker is just going to continue on into the modern era, and it's just going to repeat a lot of the plot points that we've already seen so far. So yeah, I don't really think we can expect anything too different, but maybe I'm wrong. I guess we'll see. But yeah, guys, that all being said, until next time, we will see you all later.